We're back from the break with Dr. Tom Butler talking about the inflammatory process. So, Tom, when we talk about the inflammation and diet-related side of things, the inflammatory process, let's talk about the cells and how it affects the cell itself. You're talking about trillions, and some people say that we are made up of 10 trillion. Is that right? Who knows? I know, but it's anywhere from 10 to, I've heard 80 trillion cells.
Todd, before our national debt got so high, I didn't know what a trillion was.
And I always thought I thought a Brazilian was actually a number too, you know. So, but yeah, you're right. But let's call it 10 trillion, which is a conservative estimate. These cells themselves are communicating constantly with each other, gauging what the outside environment is, and then in turn reacting internally based on that external environment. So what we have here as far as the inflammatory process, specifically with diet, from the way I understand it, is that when you're eating the wrong foods, the bad fats, the simple sugars, all the things that are bad for us, that creates the inflammatory process, starts and initiates the inflammatory process. And why it messes with the system so much, from the way I understand it, is that that cell wall becomes inflamed and it's not able to communicate and receive messages as effectively. Is that pretty well a decent analogy, I guess?
Well, think of sort of a pristine environment becoming toxic, and and a lot of people are coining this. There's a lot of acidity, and but you do need several types of acid to function.
Yes.
But what you're doing, you're forming chemicals that are related to the arachidonic acid. You're stimulating the prostaglandin E2s. You are then feeding a cycle of COX-2. So now finally a word somebody recognized, because we've all heard of COX-2 inhibitors.
Yes.
And we know of the Vioxx because they took that off the market, because it was not only helping you with your inflammation, it was causing a side effect of damaging heart. But we still have the Celebrex. But what we're talking about here is you will literally be able to affect your COX-2 cycle by your food intake, some herbal intake, and maybe some spices. And that's some of the things we need to mention, is that it's one bad thing. I hate to get onto the bad things, but we have the pyramid, and the government again has told us that we need a lot of grains and milk products and these things, and those actually feed into that cycle of pain.
Yes.
The things that we learned were true, then false, and now they're back to true. We have to go back to like we used to be. Like you said, go back to the basics, way back. When you had foods that were not as processed, and you don't feed into that cycle as much. They don't have as many things like MSG and things that preserve them. And you know that I know you're a well-trained athlete. You know there's a huge difference between the raw milk and then the pasteurized milk.
Certainly.
Correct?
And then in turn, not only that, but like oils, and this has been my point all along, corn oil and soy oil. As hunter-gatherers, we were taking small handfuls of these things, and we would only get a drop or two of this omega-6 fat. Now we're able to grow massive fields of it, process it, take the oil out of it, take it and heat it to 500 degrees and drop a chicken breast in it and fry it. Well, that is what's causing the inflammation, because when we were living on a farm, we were drinking, these fats and these foods that were raw, that were in their natural state, they were unaltered. And even though it may be an organic corn oil, it still kind of goes against nature. We never were able to do this, and so therefore we've increased omega-6, decreased omega-3, and that causes the inflammatory process to kick in as well, right?
I try to get people, because they're like, oh, there's just, in this bag of chips, there's just maybe a teaspoon of oil. Well, to get that much oil from nature, you may have to take 18 cups of corn.
Yes.
So who would sit down and eat 18 cups of corn? And if you did, you'd have so much bulk it would remove you from the problem. But
right.
All of us will sit there and eat one of them little snack bags of chips, and when we're done, we're not full.
And so we choose even more. And then you look at it, it's not just one or two isolated things. And this is the point that when we talk about diet, it's the old 80-20 rule. You know, if 80% of your diet is good, you can get away from time to time of eating those chips and doing other things. But whenever you have an 80% of your diet, and I see people, and you do as well, you deal with these people all the time, 80% of their diet is bad, and then they take vitamins or eat maybe an organic salad once a week, and they think somehow that's going to correct them. It's about consistency with the diet, and then it's also about balance, because if you look at the American diet, especially with this food pyramid, like you said, grains at the bottom of it, and then it works its way up. And I tell people, if you want to fatten up a hog on the farm, you feed it according to the food pyramid. That's the way you fatten a hog up, is feeding predominantly grain. Well, we wonder why Americans are starting to look like sumus. Well, it's because they're kind of on the sumu diet. They're eating an enormous amount of carbohydrates. That's the basis of their diet. And then ultimately, it's the wrong types of carbs in way too much proportion, too much oils that are the wrong type of oils, bad proteins, bad fats, bad sugar equals bad health, obviously.
They add in, they always add to me, they go, well, I only drink diet pop. Well, there's some new research, I just got that today, but anyway, that they're doing some research on some of the additives, preservatives, and the sweeteners. And they're finding out that potentially that inhibits the device that's produced in your stomach that tells you you're full. So if you ever wondered why all these people drinking and eating the diet things are not very thin, that's their excuse, and they actually do have an excuse. So
yes, disrupting the entire system.
Disrupting, and pardon me, it one of the sweeteners, I don't want to mention a lot of names, but one of them on a sweetness scale, because they even do commercials that say, hey, it's excuse me.
Yeah, distracted you a little bit. I know that's all right. But yeah,
but anyway, it's up to 200 to 300% sweeter than table sugar.
Whoa! And which
so
really
you're distorting their flavor.
Yes.
So they don't know that sweet is sweet anymore, because no longer is an orange sweet.
Right.
No longer is a watermelon sweet. You want to put some sugar on there because you're used to such a sweet.
Yes.
So you're distorting their fullness factor and their taste.
And their taste buds, which actually causes the problem to continue to go downhill in the spiral. And you know, you look at some of the, and the one, I love this commercial whenever NutraSweet came out, and I will mention NutraSweet, is they said that it's two products found in nature. Two amino acids found in nature. Yes, certainly. It's two amino acids found in nature. However, it's never found isolated. Those two are never found isolated, and they're never found in combinations alone. And whenever you drink that by itself, and you know as well about amino acid therapies, amino acids, when taken singularly on an empty stomach, causes almost like a drug-like effect in the body. So we're finding now, and there's warnings now with NutraSweet, it's warning epileptics, that it causes seizures. Well, yes, we know that now. And what else is it causing? We don't know, because we're all guinea pigs, folks. We're all in this big experiment here, and we're all learning how these foods affect us. And the first thing that pops up, and it goes back to inflammatory process, inflammation is a good thing, Tom. It's actually a signal saying there's something wrong, and it kicks in the healing process. It brings the blood flow and protects that area. Everything is there. It's a good process. It's just when it gets out of control and it gets too crazy and systemic, that's when we have a problem. And why is it created? Lack of nourishment and eating the wrong things.
Well,
basically,
my other thought is, if you could just simplify what we're saying, it's that the more we produce products unnaturally, the more difficulty we're going to find.
Yes.
Maintaining our health.
So going back to the closest to nature as you possibly can.
To simplify, because a lot of this does get very complex very quickly, but vegetables,
yes,
fruit, some meats, and some nuts. All the other seeds and all the other oils, other than pretty much coconut oil and olive oil and some butter, are very pro-inflammatory.
Yes.
So, and the guys talking here, once a year I fry my turkey in peanut oil, so I know I'm in trouble. But
you just kick in that other. You make sure that you do the right things on the heels of that.
Right.
It's just like the Super Size Me documentary. The guy was eating perfectly, everything was good. He switches over to fast foods. Next thing you know, in 30 days, his doctor was saying, "Whatever you're doing, please stop. This is killing you." And so it shows you how much that the diet plays in, not only with the inflammatory process, but with overall health. So that's what we try to do here, folks. Bring you some basic health tips and some new twists, and we're going to bring you a lot of new information on basic health supplements, the things that will help you. But we can't do anything for you until you change the basis of your diet. If you're going through the drive-thru, if the bulk of your food comes in a brown paper sack, we've got to take you back to square one here, right? First and foremost. And it's difficult because people get used to that diet. It's easy, it's simple. But we're going to be covering other things on the show as well, as far as how to prepare foods, how to make it easy, and more than anything, how to fit in your lifestyle. But we're going to come back and wrap up the show on the inflammatory process. Tom Butler, Todd Scarborough here on Understanding Your Health. We'll be back after this break. Hang on.